Coming to you live from the palatial studios of PBJ Productions. Welcome to Patrick and BJ Talk Real Estate, where we talk about life, the universe, and everything as it relates to real estate. Hey everybody, it's BJ.
And Patrick.
And we're back talking all things real estate. And today I think you said one of the things we want to look at is the differences between Canadian real estate and U.S. real estate.
Well, you know, I find it really interesting where like the price differences, and I'm not saying all of the United States, but you can find some very affordable areas in the U.S., but I think there's hidden costs that like we're not aware of when we look at it on the surface.
Sure.
Right? I would say Texas, for example, you might look at like outside of Houston or Dallas, thinking like, you know, in a nice suburb, this is how much a house costs. But then they have a considerably higher property taxes.
Okay.
But then their income taxes are much lower.
Yeah.
And every state has its sort of like different nuances with like what their state taxes are.
Sure.
Is there a luxury tax? Those kind of things. And I don't want to jump into all of that.
Sure.
I just want to differentiate
I think
the two.
But the one thing I think we can say that we know carte blanche is taxes are less in the United States than in Canada.
Yes, absolutely.
So that's something I think that we can generally say, yes, we all understand that. We know that.
But
right?
I want to pick on somebody for a second, just because it's been coming across my feed on Instagram, on Facebook, and on YouTube, where there's a video of Pierre Poilievre. He is the opposition leader for the federal government of Canada for the Conservatives. And you know, if you're for the Conservatives or against the Conservatives or another party or whatever the case may be,
right?
That's not my point of bringing this up.
Yeah, and I think we've said this before in the channel too, is we are apolitical. I mean, we have political opinions and political views, but this is not the venue and vehicle that we use to talk about those things. So we're going to address things that are being reported or things that are being said, and we're going to talk about those things, not to make a political point. How's that?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, let's keep all the personal attacks out of it, and let's criticize policy. This time, Pierre spoke about comparing. It appears to be an apples of apples comparison, and he's criticizing Justin Trudeau for the housing crisis, the prices of houses.
Sure.
And he's in Niagara Falls.
And again, so we're not talking about what we think in terms of how we arrived at the current housing situation and who is to blame and who hasn't done enough or who has. We're talking about specifically what he said and the facts.
Yeah, and I think this will illustrate, like right off the bat, like comparing Canadian real estate to American real estate is not an apples to apples comparison.
Sure.
So he, in his video and then in the House of Commons, he repeats himself. He compares a home. It's basically like maybe it's a 1 or 2 bedroom bungalow on the Niagara Falls Canadian side.
It looks like a wartime bungalow.
It looks like a wartime bungalow.
Yeah.
It probably has asbestos siding for all I know.
Sure.
$549,900. That's the listing price. We don't know what the sale price is. This is enough for illustration purposes. And then you have like a family home that might have been built, I don't know, maybe in the 90s with some vinyl siding, 2 floors, full family house.
Sure.
For $164,900. And his big question is, why is it so much cheaper on the American side than the Canadian side? And, you know, I don't want to go into, and I don't know all of the details of like what's the differences with our banking systems. Sure. I know in general things, how do you qualify any of that? What is the cost of living on the American side compared to the Canadian side?
Yeah.
I can answer this in like 1 or 2 sentences.
Okay.
The Canadian side's nicer and more desirable.
Sure.
It's all to do with supply and demand.
Yeah.
There's more people, let's say in the Southern Ontario region, decide that Niagara Falls on the Canadian side is a nice place and its suburbs that it's going to drive the prices up higher.
Right.
The American side clearly isn't as desirable to Americans on their side. Therefore, the prices are not as high.
Right.
That's it. I know the average income is lower in that area of New York, and that reflects again in the demand and affordability of homes that are there.
Sure.
But all right, so putting that aside, I think that's a completely apples to oranges comparison.
Sure.
I wanted to start with that.
Okay.
All right. But overall, for Canadians, we have 5 major centers, and we use a lot of median average prices when talking about like what's the national average of cost of Canada in Canada. But if you take those prices, if you take those major centers out of the equation,
right,
it's actually very affordable across Canada. So again, we talk a lot about what do these numbers actually mean, and if they're actually realistic. Of course, the major centers are expensive.
Of course, and so we're talking about. Let me guess here.
Yep.
So we're talking about Vancouver,
Definitely,
Calgary,
yes,
Edmonton, Toronto,
yes,
Montreal, Ottawa.
Yeah, and you might sneak in Ottawa for sure, because Edmonton, Ottawa are about the same size in population, so we don't have a lot of. For
one thing about all of those cities, they all have NHL teams.
That's how
I did the.
That's how your geography.
That's my geography. Yeah, they all have hockey teams, so they all have NHL teams.
Well, at least there's a benefit to that, right? Where the United States, I don't even know how many major centers there are, but they are higher. They have a higher density in smaller areas.
Sure.
In major centers.
Sure.
And without going into details, look at it this way: the flyover states, all of the middle of America is very sparsely populated.
Right.
And there's differences. Canada is, which one's the largest country in the world? Russians, right? That's the largest country. Canada is the second, even after the breakup of the Soviet Union.
Soviet Union, yeah.
All right. Canada is the second largest country in the world, right? America is somewhere else down the line, but that's not my point.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you, how much public land do you think there is in Canada? So what is public land?
Parks.
Privately owned land.
Privately owned land.
Okay. Oh yeah, sorry.
I thought we were talking.
I'm asking the same question. Okay. What is
Crown land?
Crown land.
Yeah. So we're talking about parks, not necessarily all parks, but let's say parks and schools, and as long as they're not private schools and that.
Yeah, we'll include that because it could be provincial land as well, right?
Yeah.
But it's not privately owned.
Okay, so I'm going to say, in Canada, let's say it's, let's call it 70%.
And I would assume at the same time our native band territories.
Yeah.
That's not private land. That's its
Sure.
own thing.
Okay.
So that's not included.
Yeah.
It is across Canada 89%.
Wow. Okay.
89% is owned either by the Crown or native band territories.
Okay.
Or provincial land.
Okay.
Or however they break that. Military bases.
Sure. Yeah.
Probably prisons.
Okay. Yeah.
So, some examples like that. All right. Compared to the United States.
25%?
Public land is 40%.
Okay.
So it's more than what you thought. But then, of course, Americans like their bases. That's not the only thing. But if it's protected lands, things like that, right?
Yeah.
So the interesting thing I found here, public land. You're right. I'm mixing up my numbers. Federal land there is 28%. So you were right.
Okay.
You were right on the mark. 25%. I'm just getting my numbers mixed up. So in Canada, if we have 11% available to the public, our public part of the country is only 1,998,000 square kilometers.
Okay.
So almost 1.1 million square kilometers. and we are the second largest country in the world.
Sure.
And I know we have Northwest Territories and all of whatever, right?
Yeah.
Like maybe a lot of Canada is not habitable.
Comfortably habitable.
Yeah, exactly, right? America, even with their 40% of public land, they have 3,658,000,000 square kilometers. I'm not going to convert it for the Americans. They can
but about
figure it out.
three times more than
Yeah, like 3.5
Canada.
times. 3.5 times bigger than Canada.
Yeah.
In space, land that they can occupy. So you think they have more room than we do. They have more they have more supply of land.
more usable land, right? So we're talking about
Farms.
right? But the difference is, like you said, northern Alberta versus.
Yes, they don't have that kind of weather, and we're
Right.
pretty much strung along. A lot of our population is along our border with the Americans.
Yes.
So, and then we'll break this down further with population density. Canada is not full, and we're not dense by any means.
Yeah.
There's 35 people on average, 35 and a half people per square kilometer out there. And the Americans almost triple that at 93 per square kilometer. And again, like they're probably densified in the high population cities.
Yeah.
So,
And obviously, to add to that, the population numbers, you have the population of Canada and California.
you mean all the actors that left Canada to work in
Yeah.
Hollywood?
Right.
And comedians and that? Mike Myers, what?
Yeah. Or,
And bands leave, right?
yeah. The bands
Anyways.
leave, and Jim Carrey,
And Jim Carrey.
John Candy. He's passed away now, but
Alex Trebek's Canadian, right?
he was.
But he's not counted on the population anymore.
Nope. So the point is, what's the population of California now? 30 million?
It's like
33 million?
Yeah, it's a little over 30 million.
It's about the population of Canada.
Yeah, and the economy of Canada at the same time, right?
Though our economy is more diverse and more stable.
Well, I didn't break it down. You know what? That would be an interesting comparison because we're about the similar population, similar economy size. Well, how much land do they have to use in California compared to Canada?
Yeah.
Right? To see like how similar are we or how different are we?
Yeah.
But we've gone down the rabbit hole this far. America has a lot more places to choose from.
Yeah.
You go to cities in California, there's going to be more expensive places to go to.
Sure, yeah.
There's going to be a wide range.
Yeah.
So there's so many nuances to, we're comparing something that's almost population-wise 10 times the size of Canadian population.
Yeah, well, you have 330
9.5 times.
Yeah, you have 330 million, as give or take, as the population of the U.S.
Yeah.
And what are we at? 33 now for Canada?
38, 37?
Are we up that high? Yeah.
Something like that, right? I know I wrote it down here and I already forgot. 38 million, almost 39 million. But the fun part here, now that I've done the comparison, I want to share because we're in Victoria, we're on Vancouver Island. On Vancouver Island, the publicly owned land, we're on a mountain range.
Yeah.
We're on a mountain
We're on a
range.
big rock in the middle of the ocean. Well, in the ocean.
Native band territories. We have federal lands
Yeah.
because we're oceanfront.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of protected land here as well. We are 6% publicly owned.
6 only.
Or publicly? Private. Like
Okay.
we can buy it, right?
Yeah, private. Yeah, that makes more sense.
Yeah. So then we have a density of 4.35 people per square kilometer
Okay.
compared to the rest of Canada.
Right.
Where what was that? 35 people per square kilometer. So yeah, just to throw some interesting information out there. BC is 5% is privately owned, and of course, like BC, we got Rocky Mountains.
Yeah. Yeah, same like Alberta. We share the Rocky Mountains with Alberta, right?
Yeah, so we're losing a lot of real estate to like land we can't even use.
Yeah.
That is part of the Queen's land, anyways. The Queen.
Now
the
it's
King
now it's the King's land, right?
have to change everything, right?
Now actually it belongs to the Canadian, the nation of Canada, not to the. Anyway, we don't want to get into that.
Right, but I wanted to share like some of the differences when comparing these things. Like Canadian real estate is vastly different. Oh, what am I seeing on like a TikTok or one of these videos where they're showing a bungalow in Vancouver for $3 million. And it's like, wait a minute. You can't just show like, hey, what's happening in Canada is real estate. You don't know if there's latent value. You don't know if that's a part of a land assembly.
Yeah.
You know, what if that's just the land value in that area?
Yeah, I was going to say, where is it?
It's a rich area.
Yeah, where is it? What
You
if
know.
it's in like North Van or something like that, or
Yeah.
right?
So you really have to look at the details before making assumptions or these conclusions of these comparisons. So,
And I think that's the thing. It's so hard to compare across the board between Canada and the United States. Think about how difficult it is to compare real estate from city to city in Canada,
in BC.
in BC. Sure.
Yeah.
Right?
There's so many nuances, like employment, unemployment, crime, availability,
Yeah.
how much restricted land. Oh,
Yeah.
wait a minute, we're on an island. We keep saying like we're restricted by land. but-
Sure.
or by
there's-
land features.
Sure. There's infrastructure issues because cost of living is higher because you have to get everything here on a boat.
Yep.
Right. There's all these different things that go into it. So, to say that there's one, here's the amount in the U.S., here's the amount in Canada, or whatever, or from city to city, there are, I think there's a bigger picture to that than just a simple.
Then I don't want to pick on Pierre. I just want to it's just that it's a pretty weak it's a pretty weak argument to
Sure.
say that, right?
Yeah.
I think there's other issues, and we'll get into future videos where what I think what the housing crisis is or isn't.
Okay.
But I'll say that I'm still doing all my research
Right.
so I can hopefully portray that in a clear, sensible manner.
Okay. So given that, we want to thank you all for joining us today. Please subscribe if you haven't. And thanks to all of our supporters, those that have subscribed, and also those that have reached out to us and we're helping you in some way in the whether it's business or in the just residential real estate world. Thank you to those of you that have reached out to us. We're happy to help however we can.
And of course, thanks to you for joining us and subscribing. We appreciate all your support, and we'll catch you in the next video.
See you.